That's me.
Have a seat.
What was that? What was that? Who found that one? Who found? Yeah, that's my producer. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Viewers Discretion. I am your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. Hope your weekend's been going well. Mine on a scale of 1 to 10 is magical. I don't know what that means either. No, I don't know what that means either. Let's get on into some of our stories because I got a bunch of stories I need to cover with you all. A bunch of stories. There's been a lot of agitation going on college campuses across the country. A lot of people screaming about Palestine or Israel, all that other stuff that's happening out in the Middle East, thousands of miles away, where you have a bunch of college kids who are coming out here thinking that they know something and screaming and screaming and screaming, often agitated, riled up by a bunch of people who should know better and pretend not to, and are basically screaming and screaming with the objective of getting kids to do what they do best, which is act like mindless robots. And so, Donald Trump, new policy is, yeah, if you're not a citizen, that's not cool. We're not okay with that, and we're not going to be accepting that anymore. So if you're here on a visa, if you're here on a green card, which are not exactly the same thing, a green card is considered a heavier status, closer. It's a significant step closer towards being a citizen compared to a visa. A visa means you're here specifically for a purpose, which that visa is going to be designated as for work or for school or something of that nature, as opposed to a green card where you could just be staying here indefinitely without having any stated objectives. So even if you're here with a green card, that they can just yank that sucker away from you. And in fact, if you're agitating college kids on their campuses because of all the violence and insanity that's happening on these college campuses, then now Marco Rubio is informing the world that we're revoking these things. We're done with it. We don't need this. I don't need this. You don't need this. No one needs these people here. Why do we need these people here? Why do we need these people here? Saying, quote, we will be revoking the visas and our green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported, removed. Adios. ICE, go get Tom Homan, get him on a plane and get them the hell out of here. So there you go. There you go. That's the new policy. ICE arresting people. Immigration agents arrest Palestinian activists who helped lead Columbia University protests. I don't need that. You don't need that. No one needs that. Federal immigration authorities arrested Palestinian activists Saturday who played a prominent role in Columbia University's protests against Israel, a significant escalation the Trump administration's pledge to detain and deport student activists. It was also a significant escalation in their hostile activity. See, this is one of those things that it's like very little sympathy for me if you're riling folks up, because I happen, and I've expressed this many times before, and I will express this many times again in the future. While I recognize that the Supreme Court affords visitors to our country the same civil rights as those who are citizens of our country, to me that it was always illogical, made no sense, was self-defeating, and fairly stupid. Now, that doesn't mean that my opinion is the law. Frankly, it is not the law yet. It is not the law. They do get the same civil rights. So you would think, hey, they get the same First Amendment protections. And while they're here, they do. While they're here, they do have those same First Amendment rights as you and me, which is, as I said, stupid, but reality. That doesn't mean, however, this is not a First Amendment issue. This is an immigration issue where it's like, if you're being a pain in the ass, we don't have to put up with your company. We don't need to have you around. We can yank that citizenship away from you because you're kind of annoying, kind of difficult, and making things more difficult for American citizens here. So stop being a D-bag, and then we won't send you home. But if you're kind of an agitating D-bag, adios. Yes, the spittle comes out over that one. Mahmoud Khalil, a graduate student at Columbia University this past December, was inside his university-owned apartment Saturday night when several immigration and customs enforcement agents entered and took him into custody, his attorney Amy Greer told the AP. Greer said she spoke by phone with one of ICE agents during the arrest, who said that they were acting on State Department orders to revoke Khalil's student visa. Informed by the attorney that Khalil was in the United States as a permanent resident with a green card, they said, we don't care. They're revoking that instead. That's what they said. Hey, oh, really? He had a green card? Oh well. Okay. Is he a citizen? No. He's not, is he? But it's not just a visa, it's a green card. I don't care. I don't care. Is he a citizen? Yes or no? Is he a citizen? Is he a citizen? No. Oh. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, confirmed Khalil's arrest in a statement Sunday, describing it as being in support of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism. Khalil's arrest is the first publicly known deportation, which, by the way, if this guy was riling people up against black people, right? I mean, if he was doing that, the AP would be like, oh, here. Oh, yes, what great job by Donald Trump getting rid of the racists. Oh, that's great work. This is what's so disgusting about the AP, because you know for sure that this Mahmoud Khalil was out there screaming out against Asians, if he was out there screaming against black people, if he was out there screaming against Native Americans, you know the AP and the entire left would be like, oh, yes, finally, Trump did something good. Oh, this is all the... But because it's specifically Israel, where there's no such thing as anti-Semitism to the left, so because it's that, oh my God, this is a calamity. Can you believe how he's abusing civil rights? I can't believe it. He's a tyrant. He's a fascist. Unbelievable. And it's always about whether it's in support of their cause or against their cause. So whenever they sit there screaming their rhetoric about civil liberties, know this with certainty, that it has nothing to do with civil liberties. It simply has to do with, do we like this guy? Do we not like this guy? And then we're going to pretend to try and find whatever arguments we can to support that, our current position on what's happening with this guy. That's all it is. They're going to sit here screaming, oh, civil liberties. Trust me, if this guy was coming out there screaming and yelling about, the most vile racist crap about black people, they would be cheering his removal and saying, get him out of here. They'd be screaming from the rooftops, oh my God, I can't believe Trump actually did something good. That's what they would be saying today. But because it's about the whole Palestinian thing, it's like, oh, the horror. Oh, we're living in tyranny. This is fascism. Stupid. Khalil's arrest is the first publicly known deportation effort under Trump's promised crackdown on students who joined protests against the war in Gaza that swept college campuses last spring. Administration has claimed participants forfeited their rights to remain in the country by supporting Hamas. McLaughlin signaled the arrest was directly connected to Khalil's role in the protests, alleging he led activities aligned to Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. As ICE agents arrived at Khalil's Manhattan residence Saturday night, they also threatened to arrest Khalil's wife, an American citizen, who's 8 months pregnant, Greer said. No one cares. Khalil's attorney said they were initially informed that he was being held at an immigration detention facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey, but when his wife tried to visit Sunday, she learned he was not there. Bureau said she did not know Khalil's whereabouts as of Sunday night. We've not been able to get any more details about why he's being detained. Bureau told the AP, oh, well, you know why he's being detained. This is a clear escalation. The administration is following through on its threats. Columbia University spokesperson said law enforcement agents must produce a warrant before entering university property. That makes sense. That's probably true. Declined to say if the school received one ahead of Khalil's arrest, so they probably had. Otherwise, we'd be hearing, they didn't even give us a warrant. That's what we'd be hearing. We're not hearing that, which means there probably was a warrant. Good chance. I haven't seen the warrant. I don't know there's a warrant. I'm simply speculating that, like, if they're not sitting here screaming, they need a warrant, they need to have a warrant, then in that case, they probably got a warrant. Spokesperson declined to comment on Khalil's detention. In a message shared on X Sunday evening, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the administration will be revoking the visas and green cards and/or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. Department of Homeland Security can initiate deportation proceedings against green card holders for a broad range of alleged criminal activity, including supporting a terror group. But the detention of a legal permanent resident who has not been charged with a crime marked an extraordinary move with an uncertain legal foundation. Oh, it's got pretty certain legal foundation, according to immigration experts. This has the appearance of retaliatory action against someone who expressed an opinion the Trump administration didn't like. They have that right. That's the reality of the situation. Founder of Immigrant Arc, a coalition of legal service providers in New York. Let me see you stand up for Nick Fuentes. I want to see that. Let me see you do that. Because I don't expect you to be doing that, Camille Meckler. Khalil, who received his master's degree from Columbia School of International Affairs last semester, served as a negotiator for students as they bargained with university officials over an end of the tent encampment erected on campus last spring, meaning when they held the school hostage. That's what it means, when they held the school hostage, when he should have first been removed. Man, one of those visible activists, no, maybe terrorists, support the movement, prompted calls pro-Israel activists in recent weeks for Trump administration to begin deportation proceedings against him. Also among those under investigation by a new Columbia University office that has brought disciplinary charges against dozens of students for their pro-Palestinian activism, according to the record share with AP. So there you go. There's more on this story, though. Just so we can see a little bit more about what the hell is happening in these campuses, get some visual and sound effects as to the chaos that folks like Mahmoud Khalil Mahmoud is encouraging and incentivizing.
Let us come through. What do we do? We push this way. If they pull us, we pull back.
They think they're so clever and so educated and so enlightened, so much more enlightened than the rest of the world because they're Columbia students. We've seen this literally going on 60 years now. This is what college kids are. Screaming idiots who think that they know everything about the world. And that's the thing that makes them a prime target for the likes of Khalil Mahmoud. It really makes him a prime target. There's another video for y'all, more of the madness in Columbia. In my state of origin, the state of New York.
United will never be defeated.
May not be defeated, but going to be sent home. This doesn't look like legal activity right here. You see, this already doesn't look like legal activity. When you're barricading a piece of property that doesn't belong to you, this is a form of trying to convert the property. Conversion in the form of like thievery. You're taking possession of the building. This is a crime. What you're seeing here is criminal. Let me just grab another couple of these here. Not a cold fee. I haven't been here for a whole week. Not a cold fee. Oh, okay. That's better. He doesn't have to be here to protest and go to a place where he's a citizen protest. Problem solved. There you go. It's not like they're throwing him in jail. They're just sending him home. Pack your bags. Try walking across the border now. It's gonna be harder. Try walking across the border. Intent to pardon ICE agents. I don't think he needs to pardon them now. Down the stretch. We'll see how those Biden pardons hold up. Although we're going to talk a lot about those pardons later in the show.
I can't help with that. You guys can help with that.
We're making it after dark. Rating in Rumble. Rating the ghetto.
You gotta flip it, I think.
Yeah. The ties on there. Okay. You can tie it right to the log. Okay, let's give them a little cover. Camera's back.
We're going to see more directly because we don't see Mahmoud Khalil here. Khalil Mahmoud. I'm not trying to butcher his name.
We need more people.
I just don't remember.
My phone died.
Make sure we
You guys saw on my phone before it died was from this
So there you go. Kids being kids. How many thousands of times have we seen that over the last 6 decades? And Will Chamberlain properly points out on this issue here. In case you're unfamiliar with Will Chamberlain, he's senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. I should get him on the show here. Really straightforward why Mahmoud Khalil is getting deported. You don't get to endorse or espouse terrorist activity as a non-citizen, even if you have a green card. Bye-bye. And here he pulls up the statutes. Any alien who's engaged, who has engaged, is engaged, or at the time after admission engages in any activity to violate any law in the United States relating to espionage, sabotage, or any alien who's described in subparagraph B or F of Section 1182A3 of this title is deportable, which then he brings that up next. Try to make this a little bigger for you. Let me make this a little bigger. Let me figure out how to make this bigger for you. Make this bigger. We'll save the image. Back. Any alien who endorses or espouses terrorist activity, Section 7 here, or persuades others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support terrorist organization, or has received military type training. Terrorist activity is the seizing or detaining and threatening to kill, injure, or continue to detain another individual in order to compel a third person, including a governmental organization, to do or abstain from doing any act as an explicit or implicit condition for the release of the individual seized or detained. And here is the activity that Will Chamberlain identifies specifically. Here he is, a roaring. Yikes. All right. Get rid of that. In Montreal, roaring crowds celebratory October 7th. Block parties underway as Mahmoud Khalil jeers for our resistance in Gaza makes some noise to a roaring crowd. The cheering and party is dedicated to Hamas. There's this animal.
All our resistance in Gaza! Make some noise!
Yay, celebrate rape and murder. Scum, send him back where he came from. Almost certainly. Sadly, the worst of them all are invariably teachers. The worst of them all are invariably teachers who are so enlightened. Almost certainly. New Jersey Patterson mayor declared that their new Palestine capital YouTube video. Patterson, New Jersey, which is less than 10 miles from where I live, has a Muslim community of significant size. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by that at all. They're very big. There's a lot of Muslims there. Not all Muslims are the same, don't get me wrong. They're not. But I'm not surprised that he would be trying to placate them. There certainly is going to be a stronger pro-Palestine sentiment in Patterson than there will be a pro-Israel sentiment in his city. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. It is what it is. Is what it is. Not much we can do about it. All right. Moving right along. Moving right along. I'm going to jump right in and cover Derek Chauvin. Some of you may not have ever heard of Derek Chauvin. Some of you might be saying, who? Who? Well, let me tell you kids a story in case some of you are too young to remember. The year was 2019. The year was 2020. Madness was running rampant in the streets. Lockdowns had been going on for weeks, nay, months, as a pandemic swept through the country that back then was referred to as COVID-19. Later would be referred to as the big hoax. But today is referred to as, in that time it was referred to as COVID-19. Lots of people protesting all over the place, screaming, marching, chanting, saying, get us, stop the lockdown, stop the lockdowns. Anyone who said such a thing was obviously a threat to society and a Nazi or some other evil thing because they wanted it to work. The audacity. Well, by the time May of 2020 rolled around, there was an incident which was caught on camera by a bunch of folks where there was this guy by the name of George Floyd. George Floyd went into a candy shop and tried buying cigarettes or purveying some other items that you would find in a store of that ilk and tried using a fake 20. The purveyors of the store called the police, and they found him sitting in his car right outside the store. They showed up there. One of the police officers was a gentleman by the name of Derek Chauvin. There were 4 police officers on the scene ultimately. They ended up pulling him from the car. Derek Chauvin was leaning on him for what people say was roughly 8.5 minutes, much of which was caught on video. And during which time there were points where George Floyd was screaming that he couldn't breathe. And ultimately, George Floyd died. Derek Chauvin was arrested by the state police, charged with murder. There was accidental, there was criminally negligent murder, there was murder 2, based on it being a felony assault, that he was engaging in some sort of felony there. He ended up getting convicted. The public went wild. They went crazy, screaming how he was a terrible murderer and this was racism, and this led to all sorts of racial tensions that popped up all over the place during what people would later refer to as the Summer of Love, summer when there was just racial riots all over, particularly in Minneapolis, but then there was also in Seattle where they took over a police station, called it the Chaz, later called it the Chop, whatever. And they literally controlled the police station and had an autonomous zone of their own up in Washington. All this spurring on from what were the George Floyd riots. And at the center of this controversy was the officer who was kneeling on George Floyd for 8.5 minutes. His name was Derek Chauvin. At his trial, there was all sorts of marching and protests that happened, and there was a lot of evidence that came in. Some of which was, supporting the point that he was excessive in his use of force, that he was leaning on him for far too long, and not enabling him to breathe when he's saying he couldn't breathe. Some people speculated that he couldn't breathe because there was exhaust from the car, and he was right by the exhaust from the car. Others are speculating that perhaps he had COVID or he had a fentanyl reaction or some other reaction unrelated necessarily to the activities that Derek Chauvin was engaging in. Derek Chauvin and his 3 associates, all 3 of whom were far junior to Derek Chauvin, were all ended up getting convicted of basically anything they could possibly convict him of. And outside in the streets, the likes of Maxine Waters were screaming for their heads, screaming for them to get the maximum penalty. There was very, very little evidence there to support a murder 2 conviction. I helped cover these trials to some degree. And during that time, I'll tell you right now, if you ask me my personal opinion, my takeaway from all the evidence that was produced at trial, I think a fair and reasonable result was that he was criminally negligent in the sense that the police officers who were assisting him in maintaining crowd control there were saying to him, maybe you should check on his breathing. And he was the senior officer by like a couple of decades. And he stayed on George Floyd's back without checking him out for a full 90 seconds after his fellow officers said, maybe you should check on him. When they checked on him, they tried resuscitating him to no avail. But to me, 90 seconds might as well be 6 months. That's a very long time after your fellow officer thinks that the person under your control can't breathe. To wait another 90 seconds seems interminably long. That seems like a very, very long time. Do I think he was trying to kill him? No. I think he was certainly trying to express his authority. Do I think that it was racially motivated? There was almost no evidence. There were no charges related to the distinction in their race, being that George Floyd was black and Derek Chauvin was white. But there was no evidence adduced at all to support a claim that race had anything to do with this incident. However, the left used this as an opportunity to scream about racial injustice, and obviously this was racism. You can tell because he's white and the victim was black. Everyone ignored the fact that the exact same scenario happened when a white cop did it to a white victim a year and a half earlier. The guy's name was Tony Timpa. No one talks about that case. And that in general, the concept of police being excessive in their use of force. This resuscitated the Black Lives Matter movement, and made them many, many millions of dollars, which they kept for themselves and which the founders kept for themselves. And as far as anyone knows, did nothing to help a single black person who was not actually a leader of the movement, which is pathetic and sad. George Floyd, who had an arrest warrant, an arrest record as long as your arm, has been hailed as a hero ever since, with countless visual murals and statues dedicated to him, as if he spent a lifetime of just upholding the black community. It was just a perfect role model for other black kids to emulate, which is a pretty sad thing unto itself as well. So if you ask me what justice is based on what I'm telling you here, I do think he should have gotten criminally negligent homicide, which is roughly 8 years as opposed to the lifetime sentences that he got. It's which 8 years first offense, that would end up being something like 4 to 6, which means he would be getting out in the near future. To me, that's what justice would dictate. Given the bloodthirst that was inspired by the mob, that would seem to be politically insanity. Like they think that he was, killing him because he's black, and that he's just a racist who was looking to kill a black guy. So, but that's not the end of it, because no sooner was he convicted than he was arrested again, this time by federal authorities, and charged with breaking federal statutes. This one, I believe, implies that there was some sort of racial element to this entire thing. There was far less coverage of the federal trial. What evidence was produced at the federal trial, I cannot tell you. While I was able to watch day by day the proceedings that were engaged in the state level, which did not have any elements of race to it, it was purely about did Chauvin kill him, or did he die of other causes? There likely, almost certainly, was far more racial evidence that was probably proffered at the federal trial, but because in federal court there's no cameras allowed, and the fact that he had already been convicted and gotten the max, so there was very little coverage of it, because it's just a matter of like, all right, are these charges going to stick also? He's already getting the max in a state penitentiary. He spent the rest of his life in a state penitentiary. Sadly, his fellow officers were similarly convicted, despite the fact that they seemed to have virtually nothing to do with the incident. If anything, they were trying to get their superior officer to let up on this guy. So, to me, that is the most outrageous part of this whole thing. That the other 3 officers are really victims of the situation. One of them had been on the force for like 6 weeks or so. It's kind of insane that Derek Chauvin's been on the force for decades, and this guy's been on the force for 6 weeks, and what he's supposed to yank him off the guy? That seems like an unrealistic ask of a brand new police officer. And those are all, I gave you just my opinions I laced my opinions in here with respect to the Derek Chauvin case to let you know where I stand on this. Where I stand is, I think that there's probably next to no evidence that he was involved in that there was a racial element to this entire thing. But there was such a bloodthirst that whatever charges would withstand scrutiny of the appellate courts to go forward to trial, he was going to be convicted. It was ridiculous that he was tried in Minneapolis, where the tensions over this incident were through the roof. There was no way you were going to be able to get a fair jury. Any juror would be insane to give him anything less than the max and be afraid to go back home to their families. It was insanity. The entire thing, the evidence that came in there there are a lot of issues with the way that trial was conducted. Do I think that the state trial was done fairly? Not at all. No, it wasn't done fairly. And a fair trial would have been in the furthest corner of Minnesota. And the federal trial didn't even have to be in the state. It could have been in a different state. But I'm giving you my opinions, and I'm lacing that in here together with the facts. I'm sure most of you know 98% of these facts. I'm just reminding you about some of the elements of the charges here, so we're all on the same page coming into this story, which developed over the weekend. So in synopsis, we have this sketchy type of trial, which probably gave enough evidence to show that there was criminal negligence here and that he should have gotten some conviction for his criminal negligence that led to the death of George Floyd. Because, like I said, he really ignored his fellow officers for a long time. And he should have checked on it. It was criminally negligent for him not to check on George Floyd's breathing for 90 seconds. That seems insane. That's like pulling a kid out. Imagine you pull a kid from drowning in a lake and he's unconscious, and you just sort of leave him there and say, let's leave him there for 90 seconds before we start doing CPR. You'd say that's murder. That's what you would think. You would think that's so reckless. So that every second counts in that moment. So in that sense, I do think that there's criminal type of negligence there. Does that mean it's felony murder or he's trying to murder him? That to me seems insane, especially when there are questions as to whether or not the knee on the shoulder was what led to his death. So, like I said, I think he should have gotten 8 years, and I think the federal charges were ridiculous. Enter Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has thoughts. He has thoughts. Ben Shapiro is a noted right-wing conservative commentator, Daily Wire, and he has thoughts.
If we are issuing pardons.
Oh, that was fast. I'm going to do that a little slower. Let me just make sure we're all caught up here. Trump should announce his intent to issue blanket pardons of all ICE agents in December 2028. Would love to hear them scream about blanket pardons. It'd be funny. It would be funny. It's a trap. It's a trap. Wait till mid-November of 2028. We need that fish guy saying, it's a trap. That fish head guy from Star Wars.
However, there is one person that President Trump should pardon from federal charges forthwith. It would be incredibly controversial, but I think that it's absolutely necessary. That person is Derek Chauvin.
Absolutely necessary. Absolutely. That's what Ben Shapiro is telling us. It's absolutely necessary. Tell us, Ben.
President Trump should, in fact, pardon Derek Chauvin. He should. He should pardon him his federal charges. If we are talking about reversing the evils of the last several years in American life, obviously COVID and its handling was a massive evil. Destroyed the economy, set us on a path to fiscal insanity.
Not relevant.
Destroyed children.
Not relevant.
Led to massive health-related cover-ups.
Yeah, we know.
Just horrifying all the way around. And President Trump has taken on a lot of those things.
Yeah, not really. Not really. He hasn't really addressed anything that happened. Did I miss something? I know he's been very busy. There's been a lot to cover. I don't know that he covered anything with respect to COVID and what happened during that whole thing.
But when it came to BLM, the inciting event for the BLM riots that caused $2 billion in property damage in the United States and set America's race relations on their worst footing in my lifetime, was in fact the railroading of Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd.
The George Floyd incident is what set us a kilter. That's for sure. The railroading at his trial, I don't think is what set us a kilter. The fact that he was railroaded at the trial, I don't think that's what set us a kilter. That was a reflection of the fact that there was incredibly high racial tensions that the genesis was his death, with George Floyd's death. But to say that the trial, the railroading of Derek Chauvin is what created these racial tensions, that's not true, because Derek Chauvin was not like strongly supported by the white community of like the horror that this guy's being convicted. So I disagree with the way he's framing this from the get-go, that he's saying, he said this was the genesis of the racial tensions were the railroading of Chauvin. No. If Chauvin would have fled the country and never been found again, we still would have had the same racial tensions. So I disagree with him on this take.
The evidence demonstrates that Derek Chauvin did not, in fact, commit murder of George Floyd.
I agree he didn't commit murder. Criminally negligent homicide, I think he did. But murder, I would agree.
George Floyd was high on fentanyl. He had a significant pre-existing heart condition.
That all may be true. He might have been ripe to die, more ripe to die than most people, given the circumstances that he brought upon himself before he was detained by Chauvin. But Chauvin takes his victim as he finds him. And just because Floyd may have looked like a massive bull, but internally may have been incredibly weak and ripe to die, that doesn't mean that Chauvin's not responsible to ensure that his death does not occur. So I agree with you that all those factors probably played a role, but that doesn't mean that Chauvin doesn't take his victim as he finds him.
George Floyd was saying he could not breathe before he was even out of the car. He was in the car saying he could not breathe. Derek Chauvin, for large segments of even the tape that was shown, had his knee on George Floyd's shoulder or back, not on his neck. The autopsy of George Floyd showed that he had no damage to his trachea, that probably George Floyd died of excited delirium. There were
Very possibly true. Very possibly true. Still, you could have checked on him. When you had a minute and a half notice to check on him.
no accusations, even at trial, that Derek Chauvin had committed a hate crime against George Floyd or that he targeted George Floyd because
At the state level. I don't know that you know that didn't come up at the federal level. I don't know how you would know. I very strongly doubt Ben Shapiro went through the evidence that was presented at the federal trial. Because as I said, that was not televised. Nobody, you had to actually go down there and cover it or find someone who was covering it day by day and actually be monitoring it. Very, to really say that as being a statement of fact that there was no evidence there was a hate crime. Do I think it was a hate crime? No. I'm not saying it was a hate crime. I'm simply saying his claim here that there was no evidence, I think is probably a guess on his part rather than it being a known thing that he's saying that he can really say with certitude.
because of his race. Nonetheless, on the basis of extraordinarily scanty evidence, and despite the fact there was massive pressure on the jury, that the mayor of Minneapolis paid a settlement to the George Floyd family immediately.
$30 million. An insane number. $30 million.
That the president of the United States suggested that Derek Chauvin was guilty right off the bat.
Also terribly wrong. Terribly wrong.
That the jurors were being openly threatened and admitted as much. Despite all of that, Derek Chauvin was convicted on federal charges and pled guilty to federal charges. Derek Chauvin should, in fact, be pardoned on that.
Oh, he pled guilty on federal charges? I didn't know that. Maybe he just didn't have it. I didn't know about that.
We'll be covering that a lot more in coming weeks because I think it is worthwhile to remember that there is a man who is rotting in prison because the media decided in the middle of 2020 that they were going to turn a tragic law enforcement stop that ended with the death of a man who had a significant problem with drugs and pre-existing health problems into the raison d'etre of the entire 2020 election. And it led to vast chaos. It led to, again, the destruction of racial comedy in the United States, $2 billion in property damage, and a guy rotting in prison who the evidence demonstrates certainly was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in that case.
Criminal negligent homicide, there was a lot of evidence there.
If we're going to talk about delivering pardons, President Trump, I think, should really seriously consider pardoning on federal charges. He can't pardon on state charges. Derek Chauvin, who is convicted of the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah, but that's the most important part. That's the most important part. On federal. So what is this doing for him? What is it doing for Derek Chauvin? First and foremost, if he's in federal prison rather than state prison, I'm not sure which he's in, whether it's federal prison or state prison. If he's in federal prison rather than state prison, it's a much better prison for him. By all accounts, federal prison is a much cushier place to be than state prison. So if he is indeed in federal prison, and then because of this pardon, now ends up going into state prison, you're basically to Derek Chauvin by giving him a pardon. You're making his life much worse by giving him a pardon. You can't pardon him on the state charges. You can't do anything about the state charges. I don't understand what the hell Benny's thinking about here. Honestly, I have no idea what is going through his bloody mind on this. This is the most ridiculous, stupidest take in the world. So Donald Trump should go out on a limb and then give more fodder to his enemies that he's a racist who hates black people, because that's how the spin, that's how the spin is going to go. So he should give more fodder to them by pardoning him on the federal charges when that will do nothing to help Chauvin. If anything, it would only harm him by making him go from federal prison to state prison. Again, I'm not sure, he might already be in state prison, but if he is in federal prison, that's supposedly a much better place. So to make some sort of political statement that this was an unfair railroading of Derek Chauvin, which frankly, the guy probably did commit criminally negligent homicide. In order to make this statement, Trump should gin up this whole stupid ancient story, bring it all back all over again, and he should just say, no, the federal charges are gone. He'll be in jail for the rest of his life for the state charges, but the federal charges are gone. Why would he sacrifice his own political agenda and pick this is the battle he's going to choose? That Donald Trump should pick this is the battle. He should come out on this one and say the federal charges are now gone. You can all hate me for and think that I'm a racist, even though it's stupid to think that any of this had anything to do with race. But yeah, I'm going to say now, I'm going to wipe away now that the federal charges, and it doesn't undo the guilty verdict. It just means he's not punishable for it. That's what a pardon does. So it doesn't even undo it. It just basically means I'm in Derek Chauvin's corner. How on earth is that helping Derek Chauvin? How is that helping Donald Trump? How is that fixing anything at all? Is there a single thing that is better for Derek Chauvin? If you told me that all there were federal charges, and you're talking about the balance of a man's life here, where he was railroaded, and now because of these federal convictions, now he's going to be spending the rest of his life in abject misery, and it was railroaded, and then I say, okay, look, it's a tough hit for Trump to take, but that's what justice says, is he should walk. That's what justice says. Same way I was all on board with the J6. I said that whole thing was crap. It's crap. I know he's going to get a political hit for it, but you know what? These people don't deserve it, and these are the only charges they're facing. Get them out of jail now. But this would not be getting Derek Chauvin out of jail. If anything, you would simply be moving him from a better prison to a worse prison. Why on earth would anyone think this is a good idea? I have no idea what Ben is thinking about. I don't know if he's just trying to produce content that he thinks is going to be controversial. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be something that's create some hubbub. It definitely created some hubbub. Here it is. I'm spending a half hour talking about this whole incident. I think that this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This is so politically not savvy. This is just politically ignorant. Because all he will do is make it harder for him to fulfill his agenda. All he will do is build up more hate for himself and do nothing at all that will actually help Derek Chauvin. So you're saying let him make a political statement, which is politically suicidal toward his overall agenda. How stupid is that? Why would you make a political statement that's designed to basically make it more difficult for you to get actual accomplishments in your political agenda? The dumbest thing in the world. I don't know what the hell he's thinking. Stupid. Just stupid. I do need to call attention to everyone here and let you know that Lily Smith, that's right, Lily Smith, 30 freaking months. 30 months. Oh my God. 30 months. 2.5 years. You and me, kiddo. Wow. God, I'm giving you another one. This has to be my longest running member. This has to be my longest running member. 30 months. 30 months in the following. 30 months in the group that is not at all a cult type of cult. God bless you. God bless you, Lily. Can't believe it. Aaron, I guess I should care about this case, but it just brings back bad memories of those days. What a dark time. Drop it, Ben. Yeah, it does. It does brings up terrible memories. Terrible, awful, miserable memories. Awful memories. I don't know if he's trying to sabotage Trump. I don't know if he's trying to create content. I don't know what the whole agenda is, but this is the stupidest thing imaginable. If a short killed racist cardiovascular human. It's so hard. It's so hard to tell a good racist heart joke anymore. You can't. It just ruined it. Obviously, Ben fell out of bed and hit his head. That's very likely. Very, very likely. I believe these colleges are radicalizing these students. It's not maybe. That's a definite, because you send them to college and they're normal, and then they get out of college and you're like, what's happening? And they're like, what the hell is happening here? I don't even know what's happening. Let's check out Trump's thoughts on pardoning Derek Chauvin.
Your allies are calling on you to pardon Derek Chauvin. Are you considering pardoning Derek Chauvin?
No, I haven't even heard about it. No.
Your allies are.
That's him saying I haven't heard about it. You're like, wait, you know who Derek Chauvin is, right? President Trump. You know who he is, don't you? There's another clip which is a little bit longer. This is the one that's a little longer, where he clarifies right afterwards.
Solve the problem. Mr. President, your allies are calling on you to pardon Derek Chauvin. Are you considering pardoning Derek Chauvin?
No, I haven't even heard about it. No.
Mr. President, on peace.
I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard that. I take it meaning I haven't heard. It's like I know Derek Chauvin is. I haven't heard that people are calling on me to pardon him. But will he be pardoned? Will he get a pardon? Is that coming? Well, Angela Stanton King says who she is senior advisor to RFK Jr. So she's closer to the circle that would know than I am. Says, I know this is probably going to piss a few conservatives off, but as a criminal justice reform advocate that works closely with President Donald J. Trump and his administration, Derek Chauvin doesn't stand a chance in hell of receiving a pardon. Thank God. To add context, Chauvin was convicted of state murder charges, which is out of Trump's jurisdiction. Thank God, because it would just be stupid. Just be stupid. Let's give this a little heart, because I think that's the right course, obviously. Obviously. Here's one more gentleman weighing in on it. One more gentleman weighing in on this topic.
There is absolutely nothing beneficial that pardoning Chauvin would do for the Trump administration, for this country, for race relations, for anybody else. It is absolutely destructive. It makes no sense. And so for me, when I first saw this, generally conversations that happen come from the ground up. Usually there's some sort of murmuring under, and then it kind of like bubbles up, and then it becomes a national conversation. This seems to be a very top-down conversation that comes from somebody with an enormous amount of influence. This is nothing that anybody was talking about or thinking about. So it really makes me question, why is this conversation happening right now? It makes me question, why did Ben Shapiro want to start this conversation right now? Who does this benefit? Doesn't benefit Trump, doesn't benefit America, doesn't benefit race relations. It doesn't benefit anything. And the last point I'll make on it is this. There are very few people that can actually really speak to in depth what was going on in that trial, how how George Floyd actually died, et cetera, et cetera. There's probably 5 people that have, spent the bulk of their day on a podcast set every single day, like Ben Shapiro, like maybe 2 or 3 other people that can really talk to you in depth about this. So then they're positioning themselves to say, no, listen to me. I'm the one who really knows about this. So
I know more than Ben
Trump's
Shapiro
agenda
does.
is supposed to be derailed. Where we're at as a country right now is supposed to be derailed because these leftists and these Democrats are looking for a reason to have another race war. That is what they love. So why this conversation is happening right now, I have no idea.
You're right.
No, I am not.
He's spot on correct. I don't know who this guy. Who is this guy? Rob Smith. I don't know who he is, but Rob Smith is spot on correct.
There is absolutely nothing.
And I agree with law of self-defense. I disagree with him. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't do any benefit. It does nothing. It does nothing. It doesn't benefit anyone. I'll argue with him on that. He comes on here. If you're out there, Andrew, I'll argue with you on this. What is the point? It's just a political statement. Dislike the baked-in presumptions of your allies. Yeah, I know. I don't like when I noticed that also. Joe, let me pass this question to you. What do you think about pardoning Derek Chauvin? It's a good question. I need to think about it some more. Yeah. I think I know as much about that case as Ben Shapiro, if not more. The Lefty Lull Show says, I live but 10 miles from ground zero in the Minneapolis riots. I used to super chat you regularly under my real name. This would be a disaster for the entire Twin Cities metro area. Ben isn't thinking. It's stupid. It would cause, by the way, massive racial unrest. You're making a great point here. And I'm glad you're back here, whatever your name is, brother. But I'll tell you right now. I will tell you right now. I hadn't even brought this up, and I'm glad you did. I do think it would cause massive racial unrest. where they would just be screaming that he's a Nazi and that he's, he's a fascist and he hates black people. For what? What for? Why? Why would you do this? It's the stupidest thing in the world. It's a great point. Great point. It wouldn't just be in Minneapolis also. It would be on the West Coast. It would be in New York, in Colombia. It'd be burning Trump in effigy. It's like so stupid. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what he's thinking. Doesn't make any sense. Speaking of the lunatics and trying to deal with the lunatics, J.D. Vance shared this story out. Today, while walking my 3-year-old daughter, a group of Slava Ukrainian protesters followed us around and shouted as my daughter grew increasingly anxious and scared. I decided to speak with the protesters in the hopes that I could trade a few minutes of conversation for them, leaving my toddler alone. Nearly all of them agreed. It's a mostly respectful conversation, but if you're chasing a 3-year-old as part of a political protest, you're a crap person. And I agree with them 100%. And they could go to Ukraine, but they don't. Cernovich is correct on that. He's completely correct on that. Should Israel defend the Christians of Syria? They should defend the Christians of Israel. That's what they should do. They should defend the Christians of Israel. Christians of Syria are no different from an Israeli perspective than the Christians of China or the Christians of Africa or the Christians of Australia. The geographical proximity, I don't think, changes it simply because it's Syria. So, but they definitely should be protecting the Christians of, I definitely think they should be protecting the Christians of Israel, 100%. Do a quick check over in the ghetto, make sure I didn't miss any of you over there. Make sure that I didn't miss none of you. All right, we're good there. We're good there. All right. All right, here we go. What I really want to talk to you about is this story. I got out of the way 2 out of my 3 stories. This third story is the one I really want to talk to you about. Who controlled Biden's presidency? Alex Jones raises this question. The Oversight Project has gathered every document they could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency and found almost all had used the same autopen signature, which raises questions about their validity and potential nullification. Let's hear from Owen Schroyer, because I think this raises a lot of very interesting legal questions, thoughts, etc.
Now the House Oversight Committee has picked up on this, and they're saying it looks like there may have been many presidential documents that had a forged signature, not just Joe Biden's "I'm dropping out of the race" letter, but official presidential documents. So it's one thing to say, hey, I'm dropping out of the race, here's a fake signature. That's not official government documentation, even if it is on presidential letterhead. Now the House Oversight Committee is investigating and saying, wait a second, was Joe Biden actually signing any of these documents? Was it ever Joe Biden? Now, obviously, there were times where Joe Biden is on camera, sometimes just like Trump likes to do every time with the executive orders. So sometimes Joe Biden did do that. But they're saying, hold on. If it's a forged signature, is any of it even legal? Is any of it even legitimate? And so does that open the door for President Trump to come in here and nullify these things that Joe Biden never actually signed himself, that somebody else had signed?
So this is an interesting question. The ability to nullify Biden's actions under the theory that they were never performed by Biden himself, by other persons acting on his behalf. Okay.
It was pretty obvious after Joe Biden decided he was going to drop out of the presidential election that this was beyond the fraud of pretending like Joe Biden was even the president. It was pretty clear that Joe Biden was not really running anything. He could barely walk. He could barely talk. He had all kinds of medical problems. He was spending a third of his presidency on vacation. But then, if you recall, this was the moment that kind of shattered the whole paradigm that Joe Biden was even the president when he said, or he wrote, "I'm dropping out." In that famous letter, I think it was like on a Friday night.
Sunday.
They drop it at like midnight.
It was on
Very
Sunday.
strange. Then he disappears for like a week. Well, we reviewed that document, and it was pretty clear at that time that it was not Joe Biden's signature. So if you go back, and if you were following then, you remember this. If not, let me just kind of catch you up real quick. Joe Biden supposedly awkwardly publishes this letter at the outset of a weekend, late into the night, that he's dropping out of the presidential race. And it's on presidential letterhead. And at the bottom, it has his signature. But when you look at the signature, it's not his. And it's not even a good forgery. You can put it right up next to Joe Biden's signatures. He's been signing government documents, even presidential documents in this instance, for years. And you could tell it was not his signature. Now, InfoWars got out ahead of this and was reporting on it, as well as some other independent media. It did pick up some mainstream traction, but it kind of just came and went, just like the Joe Biden presidency. But it was a forged signature. Now the House Oversight Committee has picked up on this.
All right. So just to remind you on the timing, Trump was took a shot to the head on July 13th. That was a Saturday. After that, when Trump's star was rising, the left was freaking out because they had just seen a few weeks earlier Biden did a terrible performance in his debate. It looked like he was rather unfit to serve presently, much less another 4 years. And then Trump has his fight moment, and the left is freaked out. So all sorts of pressure starts coming on Biden to drop out. There have been tons of pressure on him to drop out even before the attempted assassination. But after the assassination happened, when everyone saw the unprecedented level of popularity that Trump had received and was garnering, the pressure on Biden became immense. And on Friday, July 19th, I said that I expect him to drop out over the weekend. And sure enough, July 21st, on Sunday, he sent out his letter saying that he is dropping out. I want to see if I can pull a copy of that letter, because he's saying the signature is such an obvious forgery. This is the letter here. So this is the signature, which he's saying is an obvious forgery. Okay. Signature. There was an incident where Mike Johnson asked him why he paused, why he signed an executive order pausing LNG exports, and he's like, I didn't do that. And he's like, no, you did. It's an executive. He's like, no, you're misunderstanding. They were supposed to be conducting a study. He's like, no, the executive order pauses exports, and I don't understand why would we be pausing that. He's like, I didn't do that. So this was the story.
So why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand. You know, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand.
This was the story with Mike Johnson, where people are talking about, again, this is questioning how much Biden knew about what was happening and what was he doing versus other people doing for him.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand. You know, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, you know. And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, like, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? Like, I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
So that's disconcerting. That's certainly disconcerting, and it raises questions about can his things that bear his signature be overturned? As New York Post is reporting, scroll to the top here. Biden used autopen signature. Oh, God. On many official White House docs, raising concerns over his awareness. This was just yesterday they brought this out. Dozens of executive orders signed by former President Joe Biden were authorized with identical autopen signatures, raising crucial questions about whether he was fully aware of what he was signing, critics say. The Conservative Heritage Foundation's oversight project uncovered the situation, prompting Biden's detractors, such as Republican Missouri Attorney AG Andrew Bailey, to suggest it could be used to challenge the legitimacy of orders that the 82-year-old former president signed, especially given the concerns about his cognition. I'm demanding the DOJ investigate whether President Biden's cognitive decline allowed unelected staff to push through radical policy without his knowing approval. If true, these executive orders, pardons, and all other actions are unconstitutional and legally void. One of the autopen signed orders from Biden was an August 2022 directive meant to safeguard abortion across access during emergency situations. Another was a December 2024 order to close government offices January 9th to honor late President Jimmy Carter. The Post conducted a random brief scan itself of about 36 signatures of executive orders in the Federal Register from President Trump, former President Barack Obama, and Biden at various times in their presidencies. All three men's different signatures did not appear to change, although the Post review was briefer and less comprehensive than the Heritage Foundation. Autopen signatures are produced by machine instead of being done by hand. Scores of presidents dating back to at least Harry Truman are believed to have leaned on the modern autopen. We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency, the Oversight Project said last week. All used the same autopen signature, except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year. The Oversight Project divulged examples of Biden's signatures on 2 executive orders that it surmised came from autopen, and contrasted that with an image of his signature on the letter announcing he was pulling out of the 2024 presidential contest. Biden's signature on the 2 executive orders essentially looked identical, while his signature on the letter withdrawing from the 24 race had slight differences, including the lack of Jr. at the end of his name. It was simply written J.R. Biden. Biden has been engaged in public signing ceremonies on numerous occasions throughout his presidency. It remains unclear exactly how much he used autopen. Representatives for Biden did not respond to post requests for comment. In a jab at his cognitive state, the Oversight Project shouted that whoever controlled the autopen controlled the presidency. Questions about his mental acuity dogged his time in office, capping off his presidency at age 82. Biden became the oldest president in U.S. history, though Trump is on track to top him by several months. Biden had a tendency for public faux pas, in which he'd fumble his words and appeared to lose his sense of direction at times. During his travels, he started to use a shorter flight of stairs to board Air Force One rather than the traditional 18-foot staircase. His aides and allies initially denied concerns about his mental state, but in late June, when he squared up against Trump on the debate stage, appearing stone-faced, mouth agape with a raspy voice, while often losing his train of thought, concerns about his potential infirmity reached fever pitch. Democratic revolt quickly erupted. Within just over 3 weeks, Biden bowed out of the race. Quote, there are profound reasons to suspect that Biden's staff and political allies exploited his mental decline to issue purported presidential orders without his knowing approval. Bailey wrote in a letter to the DOJ watchdog last week. Bailey, who I'm a big fan of Andrew Bailey, he happens to be like a great attorney who's very based. I was actually hoping he would become the AG, not Pam Bondi. Bailey cited House Speaker Mike Johnson's accusations that Biden privately forgot about executive action he had taken on natural gas during a conversation the two had, etc. Now, so this is the letter he signed. Let's see. Let's go back to this report from Owen Schroyer.
And they're saying it looks like there may have been many presidential documents that had a forged signature, not just Joe Biden's "I'm dropping out of the race" letter, but official presidential documents. So it's one thing to say, hey, I'm dropping out of the race, here's a fake signature. That's not official government documentation, even if it is on presidential letterhead. Now the House Oversight Committee is investigating and saying, wait a second, was Joe Biden actually signing any of these documents? Was it ever Joe Biden? Now, obviously, there were times where Joe Biden is on camera, sometimes just like Trump likes to do every time with the executive orders. So sometimes Joe Biden did do that. But they're saying, hold on. If it's a forged signature, is any of it even legal? Is any of it even legitimate? And so does that open the door for President Trump to come in here and nullify these things that Joe Biden never actually signed himself, that somebody else had signed? Well, that's an interesting conversation. I don't really have my hopes up on that. These things come and go and never seem to deliver. But what the real story is to me, which we knew all along, but it's time for America to understand this. It's time for this to go mainstream. Joe Biden was not running the White House. And it may have been so bad that he wasn't even signing his own documents. Folks, this is a major national scandal. This is huge. This is beyond Joe Biden being a puppet president. This is beyond Joe Biden weekend at Bernie's, weekend at Biden's in the White House. This is a question of, was somebody forging Joe Biden's signature regularly? Or were they even using an auto pen to sign presidential legislation, to sign presidential documents? And then this opens up an entire other line of questioning, like, well, who was signing these documents or who was making these decisions? Did Joe Biden even know what was going on? And I think if you look at the last, Trump has been in, 47 days? Joe Biden has been completely silent. He hasn't said or done anything. Was that the real state of Joe Biden the entire time, not saying, not doing anything? Was somebody else making the decisions? Was somebody else signing the documents? So, yeah, you couldn't.
Okay, so I think you had the general gist of what Owen Schroyer is getting at there on behalf of InfoWars. So I'd like to have a conversation with you about this situation and what, if anything, it means for Trump and his policies legally and things of that nature, and just sort of give you my thoughts on that and perhaps have a discussion with some of you as to, in case some of you think I'm missing something. It's possible. Barnes said that there isn't a judge that would touch the signature thing. I agree with Barnes on that. I agree with you. Like, you look at, okay, we'll break the, like, you look at that situation with, let's start talking about some of the things that he's purportedly signed, and you may want to make a claim that he did not sign. So let's talk about some of this, the statutes that he passed. You had the infrastructure, the jobs infrastructure thing that he passed. Are you gonna see that get overturned? No, that's not going to get overturned. You're never going to get a judge to say that, because let's face it, the reality of the situation is that when it comes to signing documents, many of us will frequently use a pre-made signature. Many people will stamp their signature. I've done that countless times, or authorized to have their signature stamped. When it comes to legal documents that attorneys have to submit and upload into a court system, many of which need to be signed by the attorney. So every attorney I know who's a litigator has their signature on file, and they will literally just, there's no box that we fill in our signature. We have our signature that's sort of, you have a visual image of it, and you just sort of copy and paste it into the appropriate spot, and that is serving as our signature on the document. That's just what we do, and that's the most effective way of accomplishing that task, which means that it's going to be the same signature every single time, because you have one copy of your signature. And I actually have a file on my computer. It says good signature, and that's the signature that I use every time I'm signing a document. That's the signature I'm going to just copy and paste and put in there. And that's what every litigator does. You have to do that. Otherwise, there's just no way you're going to sit there with your little mouse and just start doing this whole signing thing. It's ridiculous. No, no one does that. So the idea of a president doing something similar doesn't sound very foreign to anyone who's familiar with practicing law, or any judge, or anyone who's, and I'm sure that in business this happens all the time also. I'd be very surprised if there was anything different in business, where people who are signing documents on a regular basis just have their auto-generated signature. So what makes this situation any different? Well, the only thing that makes it any different is the lack of Biden's mental acuity, and whether he knows what it's being signed. But if Biden himself, no one would say that if Biden himself was affixing, either by autopen or some other means, a preset signature to a document, nobody's questioning the legitimacy of that document. That document is fine. It's legal and it's effective, and it's no different than if he literally took pen to paper himself. The only questions that arise come because of questions about his mental acuity and whether he had cognizance as to what was being signed, or even that his signature was being attached to a document at all. How on earth would you ever prove such a thing? How would you ever prove this document he did not know that its signature was being affixed? It seems almost impossible. It seems difficult to believe that no one's going to come forward and saying, "Oh yeah, I did this. I signed his name. He didn't know about it." That's not going to happen. That's not realistic. That's not real world situation that we can anticipate ever dealing with. So dealing with real life and the realities of this particular situation, it seems unlikely that would have much effect in a court of law. So does that mean that this whole story is actually a nullity? Yes, and perhaps no. Perhaps no. Why do I say perhaps no? Is there any sort of opening at all that this could be used to benefit President Trump? Maybe, possibly, short term. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, let's say that this oversight committee or whatever committee continues to do further and further research and is able to make substantive claims about documents A, B, C, D, E, F, G that it was not his signature and he had never approved it and there was no knowledge of it, or whatever. If they can make some sort of substantive claims, I'm not sure how they would make those claims that he was unaware of someone doing it. Look, the guy's 82 years old. If he was sitting in his lounge chair and they say, hey, this EO is up here, you want me to attach your signature to it? And he says, yeah, do it. That should theoretically work, even if it's some 22-year-old technician who's doing it for him, or secretary who's doing it for him. You would think that that would be a legitimate use of his signature, as opposed to him not knowing about the document at all, that his secretary does it. Now, how would anyone know whether or not he said that to his secretary or whatever other chief of staff or individual who's loitering in the Oval Office with him? How would anyone know whether or not he approved it? But this is what I was thinking, like perhaps, and I'm just speculating here for a second, assuming for a moment that there was really one or two things that Trump really just didn't like that this was signed, and it was a difficult thing for him to overcome it. This would not apply to an EO, because an EO, seriously, he could just rip up and just nullify the EO. So that wouldn't really have any effect on that. But let's say in theory, he wanted to say that this thing is being overturned, or which has started carrying forward as being, I want to overturn this, not an EO. Let's think about his presidential pardons for a moment. It could create an opening, more of a thing of saying, look, I don't think he signed those pardons. I don't think he gave a pardon to Liz Cheney. I don't think he gave a pardon to Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff or those other sick scoundrels. So in theory, that could be an argument which would be raised, and it could give an impetus for people to start saying, yeah, there is no pardon, which is why we're going after them. And perhaps that would open up the doorway to what I think is the stronger argument, which is the notion that those pardons, even if he wanted to sign them, even if there was no question about his cognitive state, that those pardons are invalid because they're too broad, and you can't pardon the individual, you have to pardon the crime. He has no capacity to pardon an individual. He only has capacity to pardon a crime, which means that he has to have knowledge of what crimes he's pardoning. So, to the extent that on a pragmatic level, it moves the needle in getting things started, in that sense, I think it could be beneficial. Like, this story could be beneficial, where the more doubt that can be sown on a societal level or on a political level, to basically say, we don't really believe that Biden did this. We don't believe that President Biden agreed to this. So, and that he didn't have sufficient cognitive ability to even know what the hell he was signing here. To the extent assuming Trump wanted to make that claim, and then starts acting as if that legislative thing, that executive operation that was conducted by Biden is a nullity and never happened, he likely would lose if challenged in court. Trump would likely lose if challenged in court. But that takes time. That takes a lot of time. So in that sense, it sort of would give an opening for him to engage in various legal it creates various legal openings where he can basically say, all right, if you think he did it, then prove that he did it. And try and put the shoe on the other foot. You prove to me that he knew what he was doing. Do I think that would win in court? No, I think that's very doubtful it would win in court. I think it's very unlikely it would win in court. But it sort of gives an opening for him politically and societally if, in fact, he was so inclined to try and take advantage of that circumstance. But I happen to agree with Barnes that I don't think there's a single judge out there who'd be like, I'm invalidating all the work that Biden never did. Again, because it's so difficult to say, at what point are you saying that he lost his mind? Day one? As of June, when he came in there? You know that he didn't have some good days and some bad days? That this wasn't done on a good day? No one knows. So even if what we saw was definitively lacking mental cognition, which I would think it is, but some people would argue that doesn't mean he was sufficiently non-cognitive to carry or had insufficient mental capacity to sign off on a document. I would think it looked like that. Like, let's say he's in the middle of that. Let's imagine for a moment, in the middle of his debate with Donald Trump, some staffer came up to him and said, hey, I need you to sign this EO. He looks it over for a minute and then signed it. I can imagine that comical scene actually unfolded during the debate. I don't know that would even be deemed something that he's lacking mental capacity. So if he did it 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after, all the more it's a question whether or not he lacked mental capacity. If he did it a day later or a week later, a month later, how do you know whether he was having a better day than he was having that day, or whether he was as good as he was that day, and that's not sufficiently mentally incapacitated to invalidate his actions? So I think that it's a dubious legal road. I would not want to invest the time as an attorney to try and sit there and try and win this court case and get a judge sign off and say Biden was mentally incapacitated, so his signature is therefore no good. But I do think that politically it does open some doorways for Trump, where if in fact there was something like he wants to go to Pam Bondi and be like, yeah, you know, I don't think that those. She's like, I think it is valid. So he can say back to her, well, we don't even know if he signed them. Some staffer signed it. We don't know who the hell signed it. So in that sense, it could be beneficial. But is this like a serious, like, you know, atom bomb to the work of the Biden presidency, for better or worse? No, I don't think it is. I mean, I think the atom bomb is the results themselves, which sucked. I think that's a much bigger atom bomb. What's the charge for forging executive order? Probably depends on the nature of the executive order. Impersonation? Maybe. Kind of off topic, what's the name of your intro song and where can I find it? It's pretty upbeat. What? What intro song? I don't have an intro song. Did you miss my intro? I don't know what the hell. I get stuff like, I get folks like you. I don't know who vacuums. I haven't used an intro song in a long time. I used to use intros all the time. I mean, I used to do intros. I changed my whole intro style, but I used to use intros. I had a whole list of different things which I would use, like
the following program aims to open your mind.
There you got like the background music there. That's one of them, which I would use routinely. If you're really curious, you can DM me and I'll try and find the name of it. I think it's called Sport Beat Up Rock or something like that. But I found it in the free music that YouTube has. DocuSign, yeah, DocuSign all the time. Speaking of DocuSign, someone sent me this thing saying he wants me to appear, and then I was like, so he invited me to appear on something and asked like he wanted to interview me. This happened over the weekend, over the last week, and I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing this up because maybe some of you know better than I do, because I was really confused, really freaking confused. But you know what? I'm glad you brought this up. I'm going to actually show you what I'm talking about because I'm so bloody confused by this. DocuSign. I had to engage in DocuSign recently for something that my father wanted me to sign. Okay. I don't, that's all well and good. But is it in my spam? Look at my spam. Oh, so that's DocuSign. Someone gave me a link to something called DocuLite. Okay. So first he asked me to appear, and I was like, sure. He's like, we're asking a whole bunch of people if they can make appearances. And I was like, sure, okay, that's fine. Then he says to me, hey, this is Mr. Jones from X. You asked me to write to you, send you a contract. I didn't ask for a contract. I just wanted, I said, tell me when and where. I'll be there. So he says, you asked me to write to you, send you a contract. I'm waiting for your feedback in DM, what you say about contract terms and conditions and whether you're willing to discuss further cooperation with us. I'm like, I don't even know what the hell is happening here. Thanks for understanding. Here's your contract. It's made especially for you. They're uploaded to DocuSign Fast Service. The documents are accessed using the link in the document and a personal access code. It gives me a link and tells me what my code is. And then tells me after I enter the code, in order to look at the document, I actually have to put in the code again. I'm like, I think I'm being scammed here. I think this is something that's going to be, I don't know, downloading my hardware. I don't know what the hell is happening here. Like, why am I didn't even want a contract. Certainly not looking to put in a code. I don't know what the hell is happening here. I don't know if I'm being scammed. I don't know what it is. The guy is not someone who's like a small person. He's got like 40,000 followers on X. So he's not someone who just, I get these scam things on X all the time of people who like tell me like, hey, Gavin, great news. The account I opened for you is, which has $2,468,327 has been ready. Just to log into it, all you need to do is use the same password that you use here on X. Click the link and do that, and you'll get the account, and all the funds will be available to you. And I'm like, my God, they must think that people are stupid. Who the hell signs this? Who the hell is like, oh, okay, I'm just going to be, here I am. I'm going to put in my code and get my $2,648,000. This is what I'm going to do right now. Like, I don't know who the hell. And then when I click on those names, invariably, it'll be like, this account has been temporarily suspended based on suspicious activity. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But this document that they want me to sign, this is someone who's inviting me to ask me to interview. This is someone who's been around for a while. He's got 40,000 followers on X. And I'm just like, why does this feel so utterly sus? Am I crazy for thinking that this is sus? DocuSign is legit. I've used it for real estate listing stuff. The only thing is, what are you signing? What about DocuLite? DocuLite. I don't know what that is. That's my question. Let's talk about federal pardon. If he gets the state charge overturned, then it's easy to say he pled out under arrest for civil rights charges. But that's a different scenario. He's never getting those state charges overturned. That's never happening. He's not getting those state charges overturned. The governor is not giving him. You think Tim Walz is going to give him a pardon? You think Tim Walz is giving him a pardon? Hey, it's not happening. Tim Walz ain't giving him no pardon. Come on. Yeah, if the whole equation changes drastically if the state charges went away, well, that's a long way away from happening. Yes, signet rings. Oh my gosh, I wish I had one of those that I could just sort of, that would be so cool. I actually have like I already have what my signet would be. I have it it's beautiful. It is beautiful. Just waiting for that day when it comes back in vogue. Look, I already got good news that it looks like vests are coming back, and I'm a big fan of the vests. So that's good. Signet rings cannot be far behind. You're not far behind. We got the vests. Signet rings are not far behind. It's a brash move by Big Pen to usurp our democracy. I think there's a joke in there somewhere that I missed. But write your name. No one's around seeing you. I'm signing for you. Beyonce featuring Stab. I don't know what's happening here. Could Congress make a law that all official docs, i.e. laws and EOs, must have physical signature? Thanks, Joseph. I don't see how they would. I mean, to me, that would be like really violative of federalism. Like, I'm signing a contract with someone next, maybe for interstate contracts, I guess. But that would be a stupid thing for them to do because everyone's much happier being able to sign these things online. Like, much happier. It would just clog down our interstate commerce in ways that would just be stupid. The occasional fraud and forgeries that we have are not worth slowing down the system the way it's been slowed. So Biden's unfit to stand trial, but capable of running country with auto sign. Apparently, yeah. Apparently. And the decision that he's unfit to stand trial is one person's decision. That's not a doctor's. And it's not really his unfit to stand trial. He was saying he could stand trial, but I don't think any jury's going to convict him. That's not the same thing as saying he has insufficient mental capacity to stand trial. So I know where you're coming from. I'm sympathetic to your frustration over this. Very sympathetic to it. But I just need to draw these important distinctions. That number one, there's a difference between saying he's mentally incompetent versus saying he's too lovable because he's an old man. And a forgetful old man at that, which people will have sympathy for. Those are two different things. And two, even if he's mentally incapacitated today or when he comes to trial, that's not the same thing as him being mentally incapacitated when he was signing documents as president. What's the proof of the autopen? EOs on the federal registration website for Trump, Obama also all have the same signature. What is the proof? I don't know. I share with you everything I have on this Picklebug. So I can't give you any more. I can't give you any more than what we've already seen. Meanwhile, I think ACLU is about to be really, really nervous to start hiring expensive lawyers. There's so many billions that I don't think they're really nervous about this autopen thing. If that's what you're saying, I don't think they are. Right and wrong is determined by political gain? Well, depends on the context that you're talking about. No, it's not. It's not. Right and wrong is not determined by political gain. If you're asking about the whole notion that I was saying that Trump should not engage in pardoning him, it's a matter of you're not righting a wrong. You're not righting anything. There's no benefit to Chauvin himself. It's purely a political statement. And the purpose of a political statement, I would think, is to be politically beneficial. So it's like, would there be a benefit to him making a political statement that he sides with the South in the Civil War? Is that a politically beneficial thing to do? And I know this is not the same thing at all, but is that politically beneficial? The whole point is he's making a political statement. It's only a political statement because there's no upside to Chauvin. So the only thing he would be doing is making a political statement. And what is the point to a political statement is that there should be some sort of benefit somewhere to somebody by making that political statement. That's my point. Threaten Biden with charges or invalidate pardons. I don't think the pardons have validity anyway. First, he needs to test those pardons. That's where when you see these charges come. Pam Bondi, where the hell are you? That's gonna become my new mantra. Pam Bondi, where the hell are you? Do you not think the U.S. tried to help prevent the unaliving of whites and Muslims in South Africa? No. Respectfully, no. I'm tired of our interventionism. I'm not saying that that's different from me saying I'm happy with the idea of something. It's different between me saying that I'm okay with something happening and saying that there's an affirmative duty on the United States to intercede. And I don't understand what our basis is for interceding. We have spent so many decades interceding in ways that have been legally dubious, challenged our finances, and created greater resentment on a worldwide stage than any sort of positive feedback for it. The reward has invariably been drawing the ire of the local populace. For no respect at all from our allies, and questionable productivity of the result or the work product. So it's like there's so many Americans who are suffering, so many American citizens who are suffering. There will always be suffering throughout the world. There will always be people who are being wronged across the world. I no longer look at the United States as this bastion of purity and good, that it's our duty to pick up the mantle of people who are struggling anywhere in the world. There are so many people impoverished, so many people starving across the globe, so many people being oppressed, so many people being abused or trafficked or facing one wrong or another, that it's endless, the amount of charitable goodwill that America could properly invest to try and do good unto others who are not Americans. And there are so many people domestically who have similar issues that it tends to be sexier to go out to Africa and try and right the wrongs. And what I would say is you've been elected by your constituents to help Americans. So help Americans. How many people being trafficked here, sold into slavery here? How many people are starving in the streets, are homeless? How many people are having health issues or other problems? I want America and our leaders to focus domestically on fixing these problems here. Trust me, if you're looking for a charitable cause, there is no end to people who have genuine need, genuine struggle, and genuine difficulties here in America. Speaking of which, I'm glad you brought this up. Because there's someone who actually reached out to me who's a viewer of this show who asked me for help. And I'm going to do that right now. He asked me to call your attention to this. And I'm telling you now, I'm sharing this with you because you're talking about the idea of being charitable across the globe. And I think that's a very noble sentiment that's implied in your question here, Lily. I'm simply saying there's so many people domestically who are genuinely struggling to survive or to make ends meet that I think that's where I would start at home. Charity starts at home. The individual who reached out to me, he put his name in the GoFundMe that he sent to me, so I'm going to say his name out loud, and you'll probably recognize the name if you watch the show regularly. The individual who reached out to me is Brian Ogden. I'll share. I'm going to put the link here in the description. I'm going to put it in the chat. Basically, and I don't know his personal situation. I'm simply saying he reached out to me for help, And I said, you know what? I can, at the very least, he's been a supporter of this show for a very long time. He's been watching my show forever. He seems like a legitimately good guy. He's struggling right now. He writes, hello, I'm Brian. I don't ask very well in this situation, but I hit a rock and just purchased this Jeep in major issues. I'm looking for help as I would for others. Thank you. And in fact, I'm going to give a little. So I'm going to do is this. I don't know what his personal circumstance is beyond what we see here. Brian's Jeep repair, call for aid. I don't know what his situation is. But I will tell you this. I'm going to share the link to this in the respective chats and pin it. Let's go fund me. And I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to put it in the description. I don't think it's a scam. Could be. I don't know. I don't think it is. I'm trying to see what this chat is moving so fast. Oh my God. I didn't think my chat was moving this fast. Let me see my own message here. I'm going to put it in the pin message. Mm-hmm. What the heck is that? What? Yeah. I'm taking care of Brian. Well, not taking care of all of it. Maybe I can help him. All right. So Brian, I don't know if you see this, you'll catch it later, but that's for you. If anyone else is inclined to give, great. If no one else is inclined to give, I'm certainly not passing judgment on anyone. Anyway. You think DocuLive is DocuScam? It's very weird how I have to put in my password twice. It feels very, very sketchy. Very sketchy. DocuSign is legit. I've used it for real estate listing stuff. The only thing is what you're signing. I agree with you on that. That seems fine. Scam jokes. If it smells funny, don't eat it. I like that thinking. That's a healthy way of approaching the world. Buying a house with 100 wet ink signatures sucks. It does. It really does. Let's call it Biden's paper make conspiracy. That's not bad. That's not bad. Should executive orders require a notary? I mean, I would think if not a notary, maybe. I mean, there's no reason. Maybe. This is like such a new problem that we have now. And what are you going to have? We're going to pass a law saying that all executive orders are going to be notarized? Unless you pass a law, unless a law is passed, that's not going to fly. But Uzelian asked, Joe, do you think this administration will shut down Reddit with so many people on there calling for the of the right under national security, or is left pushing for some sort of trackable ID? I don't think they're going to shut down Reddit. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't foresee that happening. I don't think that's going to happen. No. I think that, frankly, I'm all for freedom of speech. If college kids want to make jackasses out of themselves, God bless them. Make jackasses out of yourselves. Most of them are ill-informed and emotional. They let their emotions dictate, basically supersede common sense logic. But that's the way of the world. And one day they'll grow up, and likely most of them will recognize how stupid they were as kids. And then they'll be dealing with a younger generation that's annoying them with their stupidity. This is the cycle of youth. But the hubris of youth, where they think they know everything when they know next to nothing. And it's healthy for them to learn for themselves rather than shutting them down. So I believe in freedom of speech, even with idiots, even with raving idiots. I believe in freedom of speech. Now, if someone is not an American citizen and they're being planted here for the purpose of agitating, in that case, I believe in the freedom of removing them from our company. And I think that that's a wise move on their part. Anyway, so that's pretty much my show. I think I covered everything I need to cover. Jesus Destiny was suspended from Twitch. I saw that Hassan was suspended from Twitch. Destiny was also? What did Destiny do? Destiny was suspended from Twitch? I didn't see that. Destiny. I saw Hassan was. That was in 2020, but I'm not seeing that he was suspended recently. So yeah. So I don't think he was. I think you're mistaken. If you're talking about his son, I saw that. Buy a new Jeep and take it off roads voids the warranty. I don't know what his story is as to why it is that he got his problem. This is my thinking. You want to know why I just sent him money? The reason I just sent him money is because he has been there supporting me, particularly early on when I was starting this show, which that gives me incentive to keep going. It helps enable me to build this little thing that I've built. So he was someone who's been here for years, contributing to the show with his comments and his perspectives, and also with his super chats. So I haven't done a whole analysis as to how much money has he spent here versus how much I just spent there. When I needed people to display an appreciation for this show, he was there for me. So now he's struggling and he needs people there for him. Is it a legitimate, like that this car thing or the Jeep thing or whatever, is legitimate or not? I don't know. I know him a couple of years. I've never seen him ask for anything before. And now he is asking. So I'll be like, all right, look, whatever it is, he's probably telling the truth. And whether he is or he isn't, I'm going to show him similar type of support that he showed me. I think that's appropriate. So that's and the only support I can give him is from my wallet, which I've done, and by sharing it publicly with you, which I've done. So beyond that, But I'm not going to hold out that I know the particulars of his circumstance, because I don't. I don't know him personally. I've never spoken to him personally. He may have called into the show once or twice. I don't, but that doesn't tell me. Even if he has, I'm not sure if he has. He may have, may not have. I don't know. But even if he had, it wouldn't tell me very much about him as an individual as to whether this is legitimate. I have no reason to think it's illegitimate. I have no reason at all to think it's illegitimate. And if he's asking, so I'm like, all right, look, this is a guy who this is a name I recognize as someone who needs my help. So why wouldn't I help him? So I think it's appropriate. Oh, you're commenting on Jeeps, not Brian. Sorry, Joe. No, I know. Frankie, you're still here. Oh my God. NYPD hat. She got a picture with her NYPD hat that I sent her. That is awesome. She won that hat from me. Great joke that she told. I don't remember it, but I remember it was a joke contest. And she won the contest that night. She made me laugh. Dang it, you're right. It is Hassan. Yeah. So once in a while, I'm right. A form of Mishloach Manos, even though not food. That's true. What Ann Bell Feinstein is referencing here is this week on Friday is the holiday of Purim, where we give Mishloach Manos to each other, which is we send food to each other, to our friends, and we also give charity to the poor. And that's when I get drunk. It's going to be on Friday, though. This is very rarely does Purim fall on Friday. A lot of people really enjoy my streams on Purim because I do. The last couple of years, I've had a habit of live streaming after I would get drunk which is, like I said, it's part of the celebration. Like, we're supposed to get drunk. So I would come on the air and do a live stream once I got drunk, always in costume. So one year I was a blue genie, another year I was flower. I don't remember what I was last year. But yeah. So I will be in costume. I will be drunk. But the problem is that it's Friday. And Friday night we go straight into Shabbos. So I don't know if I'm going to end up streaming on Purim or not. It seems doubtful that I'm going to end up streaming. I don't know how I would orchestrate. It seems very unlikely that I'm going to stream. If I do, it would be a really short stream, and I'll probably be raved. It's very unlikely. I don't even want to throw it out there because I think it's really unlikely that I'm going to end up streaming. So we might end up we're probably going to end up missing Purim this year, at least as far as my social media presence on this channel on Purim, which is. That's God's will. God's the one who set the calendar. I didn't set it up. So he knew what he was doing when he set this whole thing up. Anyway, so that's my show. I'm landing my plane over here. We're bringing it in I hope that daylight savings time didn't adjust any of you too much. You should be all fine. Most of you probably wide awake. It's only like 1:30 in the morning. It only feels like that. And yeah, I expect to be back here, God willing, tomorrow evening. Till then, you know what they say. The lab meat is for they, them. It's definitely not for you. It's not for you unless you're part of they, them, which what are the chances of that? I miss Spuds, who said in regard to Chaw, maybe it's time to give them what they want and make them wish they were more careful. I don't know what CHAU is. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry, Spuds. I don't understand the reference to Chaw. I'm very confused by that. We do a quick. I missed this. Andrews Burton says, as Barnes says, never on paper for e-sign and always in cash. Yeah, that's true. Paper e-sign is a little bit weird. Paper e-sign is a little weird. Doing a quick check. Let me do a quick check. Make sure I didn't miss anything over here. No, we're good. Okay. Don't eat the bugs. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't eat the bugs. Have a good night, you all. I'm going to speed.